Today we are working on Wendy. She is a black and white Finnish Spitz mix. Say that three times fast. We're going to get started by cropping in. We're going to press R. It's going to be our shortcut. Do a little 4 by 5 crop there. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit and introduce a little bit of foreground. It felt a little bit too tight in that shot. So I'm going to try that framing. Need to rotate this a little bit. I think that's going to work for me as far as framing goes. I'm going to move on to white balance. Press W. That selects the white picker tool. I'm just going to pick a spot where I think the white balance is more or less good. And so I think right there, we're pretty close. I'm going to pump up the saturation all the way, see what colors present themselves. We see a little bit of yellow right under that eye there. That looks like a natural discoloration. And we do see a little bit of green from the grass. I'm going to reset that saturation. We can see that the histogram is largely favoring the left side there. And so I'm going to hit the auto button. What that does is it balances out a little bit, as you can see. I really like that for two reasons. One, it does a little bit of the work and it creates a more pleasing image, but also an image that's unfocused. And that kind of takes care of the background for me. I'm going to edit the subject separately. I'm going to hit Shift W, and that's going to get me over to my masking tool. And I'm going to select the subject. And it did a fine job of selecting the subject. It missed the paw there. So I'm going to go ahead and do Command plus, zoom in here, press space so that way I can move around. I'm going to use the brush tool. I'm going to scroll, make that brush a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to trace along this white part as well as I can. Try not to capture anything else. I'm going to hit Z to zoom all the way back out. And that's our subject, nice and selected. So I'm going to apply a dog contrast clarity curve. It's just a preset I like to use. And it sets the medium contrast curve, texture, clarity, and dehaze to 7, and sharpness to 17. I'm going to press Y, and that's going to bring me up my before and after tools. I can quickly see where I am in my editing process and the effect that it's had. So far, I've really just made the image a little bit more colorful than the raw file. It looks like a JPEG. Now I'm focusing on how do I make it interesting and how do I get the viewer's attention on the right parts of the image. One thing I'm going to do here is I did notice that there was some green color cast and there's no green in our dog. So I'm going to use the point color tool and I'm going to go ahead and pick up this dropper. I'm going to get it underneath the chin where I think that color cast is the most prevalent. I'm going to pick there and I can click visualize range. And it's hard to tell because it's a black and white dog, but you did see that a lot of this area got grayed out. Some of this color does remain here. And then there's some color that's showing up here. This is what I want to get rid of. I can go ahead and I can actually duplicate the mask. And the reason why I want to duplicate it is because I made edits to that specific mask that I don't want to affect this one. Now with this selection, I can use my brush tool, subtract off the part that I don't want affected. It's bringing it back in color. That's just because the mask is becoming deselected. As far as I can tell, that's the only part that really did. I'm actually going to make sure that the eye is also unaffected just in case some of those colors are actually in the eye there. And now that I've made sure to preserve all of that, I can go ahead and I don't need to visualize the range anymore. And I can take down that saturation because it's green and I just want to get rid of green. I don't really want to add any color. I can take that down most of the way. There's a little bit of imperfection in color, so you don't want to take it all the way, but I do want to get rid of most of it. And then I'm actually going to increase the range of that color because I know that it's only going to get rid of color. It's only going to get rid of color that I don't want. And so you can see the change right there. As when you take out saturation, you lose a little bit of exposure. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the luminance of those parts as well. Not too much, but just a little bit. And actually, I'm going to put the saturation a little bit back just because there's something fake about it being too white. Now I can go ahead and I'm just bringing out that green. And I think I increased the luminance a little bit too much because of that change. So just very small adjustments, but it makes a world of difference as far as that color goes. Let me go ahead and use my object selection tool, pick out those eyes. And because we as humans are trained from a young age to maintain eye contact, we do the same thing with every animal. So we want this dog to look like it's looking you straight in the eye, of which she is in this case. I can do that by increasing the exposure. And because these are brown eyes, I can also increase the temperature and increase the saturation. It's very important when increasing the exposure that you don't overdo it because then the eyes look like they're glowing. That's too much. And then you can bring it back until it's within that realm of believable. And for me, that's about here. And you could do the color as well. You can overdo it. I just do subtle adjustments to this one. I'm not really pushing it quite as far because I do want to keep that color more or less true, but I am trying to give it a little bit of color pop. I'm going to do Command E. That's going to bring me over into Photoshop. And here we are over in Photoshop. And I'm going to hit Command plus. I'm going to zoom in and I have the remove tool selected. If I didn't, I would just hit J on my keyboard, or I'd go over to this right panel, look for the Band-Aid. I can right click if I don't see the Band-Aid and make sure I have the remove tool selected. If you have one of these other ones, then J will select those. Use Command plus and Command minus to zoom out a little bit. Use my right bracket. That's going to make my brush bigger. I'm just going to trace right over that leash because we don't need it for this photo. We could still see a little bit of evidence from the leash there, just in those weird straight lines. So I'm going to go back over with the remove tool, and that usually does a pretty good job of just making it not quite obvious. I'm sure if somebody looked close enough, they would notice, but for the most part, these are going to be viewed as thumbnail sized images. So perfection is not what we're going for. We are just going for beautiful. Command plus, zoom in again, left bracket, make our brush smaller. And I'm just going to get rid of this little eye booger, is we do not need that to make our subject beautiful. And just looking around for any little imperfections or distractions. So like this little hair there. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to zoom back out with Command minus. I'm going to look at our full subject. She looks amazing. So I'm going to hit Command S to save. I'm going to go back over into Lightroom and I'm going to hit Y so I have the before and after here. Now that I'm in Lightroom and I've gotten rid of the leash, I'm going to finish editing for mostly the light effect here, but I'm also going to change up the background pretty drastically at this point because it's not quite boring enough. So I'm going to go to effects. I'm going to do a -15 for the vignette. And that just darkens the edges, brings your attention in towards the subject. I'm going to go to the color mixer. I'm going to bring the tones a little bit more towards yellow from that green end of the spectrum. And part of the reason for that is that green is an inherently distracting color. Our eyes are just attracted to it. So if I take some of the green out of the photo, then the viewer is less likely to get distracted by the background and instead focus on the subject. And then it also gives that nice autumn vibe. And we're in autumn, so why not make it look that way? I use Shift W. I'm going to go over to that masking tool. First off, I'm going to do a linear gradient. I'm going to hit Shift, and that's going to keep it flat with the horizon. I'm going to drag this up all the way up until our subject, and I'm just going to reduce the exposure quite a bit. And you could do this a lot without anyone actually noticing. And what this does is it just keeps the viewer from getting hung up on a bright foreground and makes sure that the attention goes straight towards your subject. Next up, we are going to add a background mask. And with this background mask, because it's already yellow, it's a non-distracting color anyway. So we're going to take it down probably just -15 for the saturation. And that's just mute the tones, but we don't really need to completely get rid of them. We're naturally going to avoid looking at that blurry background. And that's why a lot of photographers, they go after that bokeh effect. That blurry background really, the reason why it makes your photos look more professional is that there is clear subject background separation. And that's what we're emphasizing here is that separation. We don't want to overdo it because then it starts to look like that weird fake bokeh that you get from your phone. I also went ahead and I took down the dehaze a little bit to -5, just making that background a little bit fuzzier and less pleasing to look at. And when you turn down dehaze, you actually make the background slightly brighter. I'm going to make it slightly darker just to compensate for that. And so you really see the subject is a shining object in the middle of the photo. And this is a little bit more so with this specific subject, just because she has white in her fur and white is maximum exposure. That kind of helps. And then we have additional contrast with the black there. The brown eyes stand out against the black and white subject. And then you also have that the most exposed part of the image is smack dab in the center. And every other part of the image is dark and muted. So we're really doing as much as we can to emphasize that subject. Another thing that we can do here is we're going to add a radial gradient. And this is going to be a big and soft gradient, and it's going to be centered up perfectly on our dog and her face specifically. I'm actually going to do command minus zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to make sure that this is nice and centered up here, just right on our subject, tilt it a little bit. This is a little bit more of that custom vignette. I'm going to go ahead and invert it, and I'm going to reduce the exposure right along those edges just a little bit. And once again, just emphasizing that subject. One last gradient I'm going to add is another radial gradient just right on the face. And I'm just getting a little bit of a spotlight effect on our subject, just honing on the face. I want to be careful not to do it too much. I'm going to hit J just to see where my over and under exposure are. I am underexposed in this image quite a bit on the blacks. I don't think I'm going to be able to get that back, but that's okay. It's a subtle adjustment, but it really does draw the attention back towards the face. We really have the focus honed in on the subject. And if there were a direction to the light, I would give this photo a little bit more light to it. But actually, in this situation, there's not, because the light is just perfectly soft on our subject. So I'm not going to add any false lights or intersecting masks or any of those sorts of things, because I think those would just not look good for this specific photo. That's your dog.